Welcome to the Will and Dave Show, where we talk about hard things, whether it's comfortable or not. We think those conversations are necessary and important. We think that having different opinions is crucial to a healthy discourse. So saddle up, enjoy the fireside chat.
Will, one of these days we're going to get a fireplace for that fireside chat thing.
You've got good lighting for a fireplace too. Brought some color into your lighting today.
I added some blue.
Because trying new things. Look at us go.
A blue kind of mood today.
That makes two of us. My mood
Why the heck are you blue? The reason I'm blue is up with you.
I mean, blue isn't quite the right word. Somber, maybe, kind of serious.
But
resigned?
Why?
I don't know.
Because the reason I am somber and serious is up with you.
Yeah, what is up with me?
The single largest sponsor of the Will and Dave Show is up with you.
Ah, yes. What a lovely segue to talk about our sponsors today. We are sponsored by Stitched by Susan. And when I make jokes about her and her quilting empire, they used to be jokes. They're not anymore. She really is a very big fish in a very trying to think of a sewing metaphor. Threadbare pond? I don't know. She's the big fish in the quilting world. It's certainly in this area and going up and going places, and we couldn't be more happy for her. I talked recently with her because she's up here visiting the better half of the family.
She left me to see you.
Well, let's be real. She left me to see her granddaughter and grandson. She left you to see her granddaughter and grandson. We're both second fiddle to them. Or third or fourth fiddle.
Let's just rest on that. She left me to go up there, bet.
I'll be sure to let her know how heartbroken you are.
Oh, I think she gets it from my texts. I don't think there's any doubt.
But yeah, she sponsors the show. Her and her podcast, Measure Twice, Cut Once, and her quilting masterclass, which she just recently did another release of, and will again, I assume, in the future. So if you're interested in that, we highly recommend checking her out on pretty much every form of social media imaginable, but especially you can find her podcast wherever fine podcasts are found, and on Instagram would probably be one of the best ways to get a good glimpse into the marvelous art of Stitched by Susan.
And the other sponsor of the show is Northern Truss in Fort St. John, BC, for all your needs, for all things roof, like the metal roofing and all the trusses and the design factor thereof. And they do floor systems that help you with the design. Or if you want to hang out and waste their time,
Yeah.
Mallory has a hard time saying no. So you can go in and bring him a coffee, and he'll talk to you as long as you stay there.
If you do that, you should specifically ask to make sure Will hears the conversation so that I get called into the office and can sit there enjoying coffee and getting paid to do it, hopefully.
Yeah. I think he might end his sponsorship of the show after that plug. But seriously, you can go to Northern Truss in Fort St. John, 250-787-3033. As I live 1,000 miles away, except for the guy who works there does not know the phone number. So therefore,
I might be slightly biased, but it's a really good group of guys that work there. Support local.
And if you want to support the Will and Dave show, you can do that it's on the screen.
www.buymeacoffee.com/Will and Dave show. We couldn't afford the in Will and Dave show, mostly because we can't afford much of anything these days. Have you seen the economy lately?
So that's the Will and Dave show. We got all the money grubbing out of the way, so now we can.
Yes. Now we can talk about things and stuff.
All right. So last week was our anniversary episode, and we talked about how cool it is that we could just relax for a week. And I figured this would be another relaxing week until you messaged me, I think this morning, and said, hey, I really want to go back and readdress the only episode that one of our sponsors walked out of the house because of.
Yes. Hopefully it won't get quite so inflammatory today. But I feel like it's worth revisiting the topic for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, it is a topic that we keep coming back to. We tend to somehow trans affirming care for kids tends to be a topic that inserts itself into our political discussions on a regular basis. I mean, it is a bit of a hot button topic these days, to be sure. But for us specifically, it seems to be a point of contention that we keep coming back to. And so,
is it because we don't agree?
Yes. And I think
that okay?
Absolutely.
Before we get into it, we should do our description of the show.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because on this night especially, we're going to do it at the beginning and the end of the show because we feel it's important. The purpose of the Will and Dave, or not the purpose, the reason we have this show is because we often have what's the word I want?
Diverging.
We don't agree on a lot of stuff. And we realized a few years ago that we would have conversations about things that we didn't agree with, and that was okay. And we could end the conversation, and we still loved each other as family, and how rare that is in society today. And so we sort of wanted to bring that into the show.
Yeah.
To all of our topics. There's a few that we really do not agree on vehemently at times, as in there's a number of evidences of that. And yet at the end of it, we still love each other. And I'm going to come up and visit you at the holidays, and we'll still eat at the same table, and we won't get mad at each other. And
yeah, I mean, we will get mad at each other too, but
only if you cheat at Uno. Won't get mad at you for your other opinions that I don't agree with.
Even cheat at you, I don't know. But to be clear, we don't think that we're like the only people or part of a minority that can talk about these things and get along. But we do want to shine a spotlight on it. We want to bring awareness to the concept that there are people out there that can have we can have very aggressively differing opinions, but sharpen each other like steel on steel, to quote Gaither Vocal Band.
Ooh, there you go. Speaking of trans and rights, and we mentioned Gaither in the same breath. Sweet.
Wait, what? What do they have to do with trans rights?
Well, nothing, but they would be the ultra-conservative arm that
They
you
would be.
wouldn't agree
They would
with.
be. They would be. Yeah.
It's something that we want to reiterate right off the top.
Mm-hmm.
We are not agreeing and to disagree.
Yeah.
We hate that saying. We just disagree, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now, after the clarifying spiel,
Yeah.
why the hell did you want to bring this up again?
Well, a couple of reasons, actually. One, because I left our conversation with this overbearing feeling that I had ideas and thoughts that I wanted to put forth, but I didn't. I don't know if it's a matter of not understanding, although it's definitely part of it, but I didn't have the ability to communicate what I wanted to describe or what I wanted to explain. And it's a problem I have regularly where my brain has ideas, but I can't seem to process how to expunge them in an easily digestible fashion. So I wanted to come back to it partially because I felt like I had more to add to that conversation without trying to stretch that episode out. It's been much longer. Um, Also, I feel like the modus operandi of our show kind of has a bit of a failing in the sense that we don't like to come into these conversations having done like a ton of background and research and all these things, because we do want it to be very layman level conversation. We want it to be very accessible and not overly meticulous. We still want it to seem sort of casual, I guess. I think is the feeling we want to give off.
Yeah, I think the key is we're not experts on anything, and we have opinions on everything.
Yeah, like most people.
Yeah.
So on one hand, I like that about us. I like that about our show, that we're not experts arguing these meticulously crafted points. We're people, regular people with regular amounts of knowledge about these large and complex topics. At the same
And more,
time,
I just want to interrupt you, and more than regular amounts of opinions about these topics.
we are very opinionated folk. And at the same time, when we're talking about something that I certainly feel as passionately about as trans rights and trans affirming care for everyone, not just children, I wanted to bring a little bit more finely crafted knowledge to the table. And those two problems I had, having not being able to express myself the way I wanted to be, and having not researched enough, I felt like I should just correct those two in one fell swoop. I don't want this to necessarily be a regular thing that I do big deep dives into these topics, at least not in this format with you and me. If it's something I wanted to do on our channel separately, sure. But in this particular case, I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into that particular topic. And so I've done that over the past 2 weeks. I've done a lot of listening and reading and watching, and tried to find better ways to accost myself in the conversation.
To accost yourself?
I think that's the way the word is used.
I don't.
Now I got to Google it. You questioned it. I got to
think
Google
you want
it.
to change that word. I don't think you want to accost yourself. I think accosting yourself is attacking yourself, is it not?
Not sure. I'm looking it up now. Accost, ACCOST, definition of accost: to approach and speak to someone in an often challenging or aggressive way. He was accosted by a stranger on the street.
So you want to accost yourself. I don't think that works.
Yeah, but the way I want to accost myself, I want to approach and speak. The way I want to accost, myself, maybe. I don't know. I'm terrible with grammar.
Come on,
Murray,
you're
if
the
you're
one that
watching,
used all the
please
big
text me and
words.
correct me. I know
were-
cost isn't a very big word. Maybe I'm not good with small words, Dave. Maybe that's why I avoid them.
There you go. You seem to be good with 4-letter words.
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead, accost yourself.
I'm gonna accost myself. There's a couple of things that I wanted to hit on that we have brushed up against in a couple of different conversations that we've had over the last 2 years. The first one is puberty blockers, because we keep bumping up against the concept of puberty blockers. And I keep inferring that they're not that dangerous. And the response is generally that we're not really sure because it's pretty new medicine, right? It's somewhat unknown.
Yeah. And your
So I've
point
done some
is?
research. Well, I've done some research into puberty blockers, deeper research
Okay.
than I had done previously. I didn't just look up articles. I looked up scientific journals and the usage of common drugs that are used as puberty blockers. What do those drugs have to? What do they do? What is their purpose? The
Right.
long and short of it is that there's a lot more to puberty blockers than I think either of us really gave them credit for. So it's not a
Right.
new thing, is the first thing that I learned. It's not really a new drug. It's been
Right.
around since the late 60s and 70s, although using it in trans affirming care is new, but sort of. It's been used to treat puberty, but never as a trans affirming thing. So it's a relatively common thing, more so in women than men, that they hit puberty earlier than they're supposed to. Their bodies start producing hormones much sooner, which can impede bone growth, which can impede height in general, as well as causing a whole lot of psychological problems for children as their bodies go through changes before they're really developed enough to deal with the changes.
Right.
And so puberty blockers have been commonly used for that. There's also some usage end stage treatment in cancer, and as Matt Walsh likes to point out in What is a Woman, used to chemically castrate people, which I wanted to touch on that one specifically. And we're going to come back to Matt Walsh a couple of times because
Because he's your hero.
he's kind of central to this.
Well, he began the
Um,
conversation as I
He
watched the
did.
movie. So
He did. It is used to chemically castrate people in the sense that it can make people infertile if taken in extremely high doses for extremely long periods of time. It isn't generally used that way, although many trans affirming drugs, both for children and adults, do make people infertile, yes. But using the terminology chemically castrate, that is a term that we generally refer to or associate with extreme punishment and or torture, which is not the case. It is technically a correct term. I just want to draw attention to the fact that Matt Walsh is finding the worst possible phrasing.
well, of course he is. He's trying to make a point.
Yes, he
So
is.
I mean,
He is very
if
much
you
trying to
like
make a
it or
point.
not, it's very much a case he wanted
Mhm.
to make the case
Right.
against the use thereof. So
Yes. So learning about puberty blockers as I have, my concerns about their use with children has drastically reduced. Like I was already pretty okay with them being used. At this point, seeing that there is a long history of their usage safely. I mean, there are side effects, but there are side effects to many drugs and treatments. There are even potentially very bad ones, like there's the potential of osteoporosis, but it is very, very rare. It's a fact of life with those drugs. But the fact remains that they can't be given out willy nilly. They're not given out just because. They're a very heavily monitored and prescribed thing. They're also not given like often. It's not like a pill someone takes. They're usually administered by either injection that someone gets once a month, or they are given a medical implant that will effectively just slowly drip it into their system over the course of an entire year. So it is very small dosages over very generally months or years. But even those are only given after consulting with a physician and a mental health consultant. So, yeah, I find that as I'm learning more about it, I'm less afraid of them and more okay with their usage, which doesn't really bridge any gaps between you and me because we already disagreed on that.
no,
But that being
no.
said, what I want to do
I'm
though
glad it makes
is
you feel better.
I don't know about feel better, feel more
If that's the
informed.
point of this, is to feed your
Ego.
not ego, but and the facts haven't changed. It just is making you feel better about your position.
Mm, to an extent, yes. but I know more of the facts now.
So I'm gonna relate this, and you can move on with yours, as I kind of want to
Okay.
address this.
By all means.
We had a friend of ours who had eczema for years and still has it. And she used to use for treatment of her eczema, it's a steroid they would give her, and there were a lot of adverse effects of those steroids.
Mm-hmm.
And she highly resisted the use of them and would only use them, in the periods of time when there was extreme amounts of discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
As there were side effects, horrible side effects of these steroids.
Mm-hmm.
When you list the maybe side effects for these puberty blockers, or the possible side effects, or the ones that they know will happen and they are used for it, as in the case of infertility, what just has me shocked, which you agree with, is the fact that you hear that and you say it's okay for minors to do, knowing that they do not have the reasosoning abilities of adults.
So, well, that's why adults
So
are
you're
involved
okay
in the
with the
consultation
side
process.
effects. Yes, except
Doesn't-
you're okay with the side effects
I
for
think the
what they
question is
may or may not like.
not whether I'm okay with the side effects, whether
Well, it makes you
the
feel better
kids
is the
and
whole
their
point of
guardians
this.
are okay with the side effects. I don't know, better is the right word. Confident, maybe, or well, I don't know. Well informed about my opinion on it. I don't feel like my opinion is just willy nilly. Can't be that bad. I guess it isn't that awful. Now I have more concrete knowledge upon which to base that opinion. But I feel like I'm trying to think of a comparison. Let's say a kid has a hair lip. Is that the right
Yes.
term when like the lip is connected
Yeah.
to the yeah. That's not life threatening,
No.
generally speaking. Not in this day and
No.
age. Uncomfortable? Sure. They're going to get razzed constantly. It's more of a social problem than it is a physical ailment, even though it is a physical thing. Would we be upset with a kid for wanting to have that surgically fixed? Because they get harassed about it all day, every day in school. Kids tease them or bully them about it. Would we be surprised if a child wants to have it fixed to make their general mental health and lives better?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
There's risks that come with surgery. There's risks that come with any surgery, but specifically that one. There's possible damage to that whole area. There's all manner of risks that are not really any greater than puberty blockers. Like the risks of puberty blockers are no greater than that of many commonly used.
Absolutely not true, William.
I
Absolutely
disagree
not true.
harshly with that. Like
The main risk and the other use of puberty blockers is infertility.
No, it's in
You
treating
cannot
puberty.
compare a hair lip to the known risk, and it's not even a risk, it's a known result of long-term usage of puberty blockers is
Puberty
infertility.
blockers aren't meant to be used long term. We're talking months, maybe a few years.
But we
At
know
most.
this is a side effect. This is not at all like a hair lip.
A
This is
possible
not
side
at all.
effect. The infertility is not a guaranteed side effect. It is a possible side effect of extremely
It's
prolonged use. Which again,
not
a
the-
physician is aware of this and will probably
All-
curb the use.
All I'm
If-
saying is that it's not at all like a hair lip, as there is no long-term effects which are negative of having hair lip surgery. It's not
a
apples
surgery.
and apples.
Any surgery carries risk. Just like taking any drug carries a risk of an adverse side effect. There are known side effects, but the known side effects are not that bad. It's only adverse ones.
But infertility and the risk of hair lip surgery are not apples and apples. That's all I'm pointing out. I'm not arguing the right or wrong of puberty blockers right now. I'm saying that is a lousy comparison. When you know the effects of one, it's actually used to have that result. And so it isn't even a risk. It's a risk on how much you take. It's used for infertility. They know that.
It's not used for infertility. I don't know where we're getting that.
It's used for chemical
castration.
Matt Walsh
Again,
right. It's meant to induce infertility. That's what it's
in a totally different magnitude of dosage, like a whole different ballpark, like a different zip code of dosage. And it is not generally used for that. It has been used for that, past tense. It is an old thing. We have much better ways
for that.
We have much better ways of causing infertility now than puberty blockers. Puberty blockers are widely, like extremely widely accepted.
Is that in a hair lip surgery is not a great comparison. So use another comparison.
Okay. I don't have another comparison on the top of my head, but you could insert any generally cosmetic-esque surgery, not cosmetic in a shallow, just seeking to look better sense, but I'm trying to think of some comparison, but nothing is really coming to mind.
A boob job.
Kids don't get boob jobs. Again, that's not a good comparison either. I'm thinking of one that if they don't do that, there's a negative side, like a substantial negative side effect that a kid deals with because they don't have something done about it. And then doing something about it does carry a risk, but they value it as worth the risk.
I think you're trying to justify I have such a hard time with this conversation, William.
What I really
have to bite my tongue.
What I'll posit is that in the doobly-doo of this video, I'm going to include a couple of links to a couple of the sources that I use to garner this information from. And so in the same vein where you recommend sitting and having a coffee with somebody you disagree with, I've now had to sit through watching Matt Walsh's What is a Woman?
You didn't watch it either.
I did.
The whole movie. The whole movie?
I have watched it and over 15 hours of videos talking about it in the past 2 weeks.
The whole movie. You watched the whole movie.
The entire thing. I pirated it because I won't give him a penny of my money. Never a penny. Not one. Nor will I give him watch time on YouTube. I will watch bootleg copies of all of his shows. Anyways, I'll include a video talking in depth about puberty blockers. It's over an hour, or no, it's just under an hour long. It goes really in depth on puberty blockers and the rationale behind using them and whether or not they're safe, etc. It's just one source amongst many, but it's the one that I think is easily digestible and not painful to watch. It's not just reading the scientific papers, which you could do. Google Scholar is a great resource that we all have access to. It just takes a little bit of effort to read through things.
It usually gets people in trouble.
I mean,
Google Scholar.
It's a good reference point for laymen to find papers, and then you can go actually check the paper out somewhere else. Use it like Wikipedia. Use it as kind of a compass to point you in a direction to find the information you want, and then go somewhere else to actually get the information.
We're not going to have a long conversation on this evening, as we're not going to agree. It is hard for me to listen to excuses. I won't be that harsh. Reasons for allowing a 9-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old the ability to make any decisions at all which will have a lasting effect on their life, knowing that they do not have the reasoning ability to know what the costs are, even if adults are involved. Even if adults are involved, all the adults are able to do is to look at that child and say, yes, I'll let you do it, or no, I won't. Because they know a 13-year-old is not able to rationally know the consequences of their actions in 15 or 30 or 50 years. They don't have the capabilities. And so all they can do is look at it.
Are reversible. Not even reversible. Your body does the reversing on its own, of its own accord.
Yeah, we'll get to that in another episode.
Okay.
It is, for many of us, it's why you don't need to do it. There are risks that you have no need to cross or to address. And
I think
we know as adults, we know there are risks. We know they don't know what they want because we know they change their mind, and we know that there are things in youth that change dramatically through puberty.
This is very true.
We know that. So we listen to an 11-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old who says, I want to be a fireman or I want to be a woman, and we equate them with, have at her, kid. And we know that they don't have the reasoning capabilities.
I think that is a gross underestimation
of
children's ability to understand, or at least to comprehend their own feelings. I think that it would behoove you, if you're someone who's interested in this topic and wants to learn more about it. And I don't want to say this and be like, you need to get learnt or get woke. That's not what I want to do. But I do highly recommend looking into, reading about, and listening to the experiences of trans people who may or may not have experienced going on puberty blockers or through puberty, experiencing gender dysmorphia. Equating it to wanting to be a fireman or an astronaut or wanting to do any number of recreational activity or something like that is not the same as trying to understand how it must feel as someone to feel fundamentally out of place in your own skin. It's a feeling that I can't comprehend because I've never experienced gender dysmorphia. I'm going purely off of what I've read and talked to from people that I know or have seen online who are trans or are closer to trans people than I am, because I just don't have any people that I'm that close to that are trans. I feel like there's a whole lot more empathy to be found in trying to understand how much more profound of a feeling that is. It's not just a little bit of discomfort or wanting to be a fireman when you grow up and wanting to be a woman when you grow up. It's not, I don't think those are fair comparisons. I think it is a much deeper rooted and stronger condition than that. But I want to move past that topic a bit now.
Okay.
So I'll leave a source. I mean, feel free to watch Matt Walsh's pile of crap, What is a Woman video. I have no opinion on it either one way or the other. But I'll also leave an alternate source or two in the doobly-doo. The other thing I wanted to touch on, in the same sense that I like to think that I'm understanding of how, from your point of view, hearing me say those things about puberty blockers and about giving them to children, how you have a hard time wrapping your head around that. It seems so fantastical. Like, it seems like a huge leap that I could be so okay with that. I think I feel a somewhat similar thing when we got into it the other night, talking about Well, your takeaway from Matt Walsh is what is a woman? That's someone who is born female, not intersex, but female, regardless of they how they identify, what gender they identify as. When you drill down to the very base of it, they are female. They are a woman. And I had a hard time wrapping my head around why that mattered. Why do we care? What difference does it make? And then around Matt Walsh's idea or his question, what is a woman? And at the end of his video, he goes up to his wife and asks her, what is a woman? And she says, I think she says, a female, a biological female that needs you to open this jar, or something ridiculous like that. And I watched a lot of responses to Matt Walsh's video. I watched a lot of conservative responses. I saw a lot of Dave Crowder. I saw a lot of progressive responses to the video. And one that really stood out to me was a gentleman on TikTok. And I want to kind of go through a thought experiment that he kind of did with the TikTok video. And I want to try and bounce it off of you a little bit and see how this goes. So, in your opinion, what is a table? Just like off the top of your head, what's a table? What defines a table?
4 legs, what you eat at. Usually with chairs.
Okay.
It can be 1 leg, but it often is 4 legs. But yeah.
Okay. So if it has 4 legs, let's just say, then would a stool count as a table?
No.
Why not? Why is it a stool a table? It has 4 legs.
It could be used as a table. Yes.
True. Are tables always made out of wood?
No.
So what it's made out of is it could be anything.
Yes.
Right. So a table is more of a fulfillment of its function more than it is a specific material or style or number of legs, right?
Yes.
So what makes a table is the function or the role that it fulfills.
Yes.
So when we're asking what is a woman, could it not be the function, the role that it fulfills within society, rather than the specific chromosomes with which it was born? Again, this is not taking into account intersex people who are born with both or a mixture thereof that don't really put them into either camp, male or female. We're just going to keep this grounded more simply in the binary, even though that isn't the entire picture. So,
what
being
was
a woman
question again?
Is being a woman a fulfillment of a societal role, or fulfillment of a role in the same sense that being a table is the fulfillment of a role? I mean, if I asked what is a book, you might say it's pages with stuff written on it. And then I could say, is a sign a book, or is a newspaper a book? I mean, kind of, but not really. They're not books. They're newspapers or signs, but they fulfill a purpose which designates what they are.
I'm going to say no, but I'm going to say no with an explanation. Again, so I want you to finish first.
No, that's pretty much it. I would love to hear your explanation.
So you want to ask if what is a table, and there obviously is a range of tables. You can have a marble table, you can have a wood table, you can have a plastic, you have a metal table, you have a glass table.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the same as what is a woman? I'm going to say no, it's not the same. Although I want to be more specific on that. Historically, we have used the word woman and female to be a singular thing. So not a range, not a variety of things. It has been a singular thing. Is it able to be used for other things? Only if we redefine it.
Right.
Only if we look at woman and we say, no, it does not mean that anymore. It now means these 18 other things.
Okay.
So if we redefine it, then yes, it could be anything.
Okay.
But we have to redefine it first.
I think that's what's happening. I think we're sitting in the middle of that happening right now.
I think you're right, and I think it's why those of us who were opposed to gay marriage were really, or I was anyways, and I'm going to say I have no issue with guys who want to marry guys, women who want to marry women. I don't. I had an issue with redefining marriage, as I don't think we needed to do that. It's another thing. As historically, a marriage was a man and a woman, and
in our
that
culture,
for years.
To be specific, in our culture,
most cultures, that's what it was.
Many,
the majority
but not
of
all.
cultures, historically, it has been that.
Kind
we
of
wanted to
because we made it that,
redefine,
but yeah,
but that's what it was in our culture and in our society. We woke up one year and said, we want to redefine it. Why can't we? And there were those of us who said, we don't want you to redefine it. Have another word. Why don't you call it the doobly-doo instead of marriage? Why don't you call it anything except for that, as that has a definition? And now we want to widen it and have it more inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And there were those of us who said we don't like that, and we lost that argument.
I think,
and I'm the first one who will acknowledge that now a guy and a guy can get married, a girl and a girl can get married, and a guy and a girl can get married. It's been widely accepted that that's okay. So now when you look at marriage, you see it having a wider connotation.
I really like that you pointed out that. I think I know why I don't agree with that mentality of not wanting to change the definition and rather make a new one. And this is going to seem out of left field, and I apologize if it is. I think my brain is making this connection. So I want to read a quote quickly.
Okay.
From not What is a Woman, the script, but What is a Woman, the book. I have not read the entire book. I will gladly admit that. I don't think I could put that through myself. I don't think I put myself through that. But I want to read a quote from near the end of the What is a Woman accompanying book by Matt Walsh. Oops. I'm going to read a quote here. If you truly cared about people, you wouldn't indulge in their self-destructive fantasies. You wouldn't promote the mutilation of children. You would help people embrace the truth, and you would protect our kids, no matter the consequences. They attempt to rule by propaganda, fear, and force. But they have awoken a sleeping giant. We are not afraid of them, and we will take down their degenerate reign of terror. I heard that, and then read it, but I heard it. The quote was used in another video. And it kind of sparked like a light bulb in my head about why I don't like, or why I do like, including other groups into our definitions as opposed to making them get new definitions. And it's because if they have their own definitions, if we keep them out of our definitions, speaking as a cis white male, it makes it really easy to dehumanize them, to turn them into a they, a them, an other, an enemy. And Matt Walsh uses this language, he specifically, but a lot of people, and some people on the left do it too, and I don't like it. Like, for all of my railing against, billionaires, eat the rich, and all that jazz, I don't think that they're exclusively to blame for the world's ills. But I don't like dehumanizing in any form. And despite the fact that I am guilty of doing it myself sometimes, I do speak very harshly of billionaires and my lack of empathy for them. They can afford it. But when it comes to talking about marriage and
I'll
and
be
the
sure and tell your
everyman,
mother that when she becomes a billionaire.
she may be the first exception. I hope she is. I hope she is the exception to absolute power corrupts absolutely. But I don't like separating people and saying, no, 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 no. What you have isn't marriage. It's this other thing. Because then it makes it really easy to treat them as others, as they, as an enemy. And I don't like the language or the implication. Like, not even getting into how
So
aggressive what Matt Walsh says is.
ignore Matt Walsh for a minute, as he is aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a point there, and I mentioned it last week, and it goes along with the marriage thing. But the marriage is not a good example of it, as marriage is a noun, except it's used as an adjective. A marriage is a man and woman getting married. Historically, now it is more than that.
Mm-hmm.
The issue with allowing a young person whose mind and reasoning is not all developed for saying, I'm not a woman or I am a woman, is we're allowing them to choose what physically is a binary thing. And they wake up and they say, I'm not a woman anymore. But they are physically a woman, or vice versa. You'll get that inference, I hope. Whichever one they are physically, they wake up and they say, I'm not this.
Again,
the issue with that is you are allowing them to say a lie because they are that.
It's not a lie.
Now, if they feel that way or they do not feel that way is a completely different argument. But the fact is they are female or male, with the odd exception of the one in however many million who are intersex, which I'm not going to engage on that because it's not germane. They are one or the other. And we allow them to say, no, we're not.
What they're saying when they say, I'm a woman or I'm a man, this becomes largely a toxicological thing.
No, it's a physical thing. As of now, it's a physical thing.
I want to clarify in the same sense as our previous episode. We're doing again this episode where when we say woman or man, we're speaking biological sex, not gender, but sex, chromosomal differences.
Yes. As that's what it means. Up until now, that's what that means.
Yes.
You want to change it, and those of us who are saying...
No. Hear me out.
I say those on the left.
The vast majority of videos, podcasts, written pieces that I have read, watched, and listened to conflate woman and man interchangeably with gender and sex. And it is incredibly confusing. And Matt Walsh actually, in his movie, one of the people that he was interviewing tried to separate those two, and Matt Walsh edited over it, making them sound like a ridiculous crazy person. When they were trying to separate those two definitions because they are two different things. Gender is performative and a biological sex is what you're born with.
That's true.
You're right. A person's biological sex cannot be changed. It can be mollified and modified, but it can't be changed outright.
That's right.
But this brings us back to
historically, and up until now, while we're having this conversation, a woman and a man is a binary thing. It's not a
in terms
range.
of sex, yes. Not in terms of gender. Not in terms of the roles they fulfill or they fit into.
I don't argue that.
So this brings us back
But you
to
want to change it to mean whatever we want it to mean.
no.
Yes.
Me personally, want to separate gender from sex because they are two
But
separate things.
I'm not
It,
arguing that.
what I'm saying is, I, I want to go back to my previous metaphor, even though you didn't like it. I want to utilize that metaphor again of the hair lip.
Hold on a second. You want to allow the word woman to only be gender specific
No,
and not sex specific.
no. I want
As
us
it can't
to
be both.
acknowledge,
As it cannot be both, William.
but people
As one
use
is
it as
binary
both.
and one is not.
We have clarified our usage of that word. Everyone, like without exception, every article, every podcast, every video, including Matt Walsh's video, conflates woman and a waffle between gender and sex. And it is incredibly aggravating, confusing when you're trying to find specific information on the two. People tend to specify male and they tend to specify feminine, but when they say woman and man, it tends to waffle in this middle ground of meaning whatever they want it to mean, kind of like a wild card or
What do
the
you
black
mean?
Uno card.
What do you mean?
Whenever
No, explain that.
you read about it and talk about it, people conflate woman with both the sex and the gender interchangeably. And I'm not saying that it has to be one or the other. I kind of am. I would like it to be one or the other. I would like it to be nailed down as one or the other. I don't really give a flying fart which one it is. I wish people would use the appropriate language to describe what they're talking about.
Let me just, I have to come back to that because I sort of agree with you, which shocks me.
All right.
Yes, they use it interchangeably as sex and gender, but almost universally, it is meant as female. Historically, it is meant as female. And so, yes, it's used as a gender and a sex, but almost universally, regardless of which one it's used as the female expression of sex.
I have to disagree with you.
Why? Because if you say I'm a woman and you're a man, it's because you
No.
feel feminine.
I'm saying that if you don't know what's between a person's legs, if you saw somebody in a dress, like I'm going to use an incredibly sexist example, but if you saw somebody in a dress with a baby in their arm cooking dinner,
yes,
you would assume, oh, hey, it's a woman.
Yes.
So I'm just saying your statement that historically it has always referred to a biological female is incorrect. It has meant that by association, but woman historically has been used to describe the fulfilling of a function, of a purpose, of a place in society, of what a person is doing and how they appear to us. It has been used to describe gender. And I don't really give a crap which we use to describe, like which one we use it to describe. What I'm saying is that we can't have it both ways and have it mean both things and also mean only one thing.
It to be both ways.
What you're saying is that it's always meant the one thing, but it hasn't. All of my experience, like this is the one universal constant between both conservative and progressive information that I have imbibed, not just in the last 2 weeks, but expressly in the last 2 weeks. Every single one of them has used the term interchangeably. They all do it. Everyone does it. It is not used exclusively to refer to female. For you, maybe to you, the term woman means female, biological female. That's fine. That's okay. But I'm saying that your statement that historically it has been used as such is incorrect.
William, and I'm not going to run really deep into this as it hurts my brain that I have to explain this. If you walk in a house and there's an individual who's in a dress and she's at the sink and she has a baby, I said she. And the individual has a baby in their arms. And they have long blonde hair. And they have breasts.
Mm-hmm.
And you walk in and you assume they are a woman. It is not because of the role that they're fulfilling. It's not because of the gender that they assume they are. It's because every indicator in the world, if it be social or physical, is aiming at a biological woman.
No, it's
And
aiming
so,
it's aiming
no,
at the expression of womanhood.
no,
Because
William.
all of the things that you just described are actions and
They all
they are
are
functions.
but they all have been the functions historically of a biological woman.
Cool. But that still
Okay, so
doesn't
it
change
still,
anything.
yes, it
No,
does,
it doesn't.
William.
It just
It
means that they do
means,
it most of the time. It doesn't mean that it is exclusive to them. Anyone can fulfill those roles regardless of what's between their legs. Anyone can do it.
yes, but William, when I go upstairs and I hold my granddaughter in my arms
Mm-hmm.
and I'm washing dishes, nobody walks in the room and says, "Oh, there's a woman." They don't, because
That's true.
it is historically you walk in and you assume the physical attributes are a woman. You don't assume he's at the sink, so therefore he must be a woman. They don't. Historically, it is a binary thing, and I say we really loosely, you want to change the assumed value of woman. You want to assume that it means gender, and so it's fluid. It can be whatever a woman wants to be. And there are those of us who say, no, it's not fluid. If you want to make it fluid, fight me, and I might lose this argument over time. But right now,
I'm hoping.
if you see a person at a sink with breasts, in a dress, and a baby in her arms, you are going to assume this is a woman because it is a binary argument. It's not an assumption which is based on what I want to be.
Let's take that thought, the scenario you described.
Yes.
You assume that they're a woman. That's fine. That's great. You have assumed their gender. And I don't mean that in a negative sense or as a joke.
No,
I mean, you have extrapolated.
Their sex.
No, you
assumed
their
sex.
gender.
No, I didn't.
Okay, you assume their sex. But what if they aren't?
Yes.
What if the person doing all of those things has a penis? They're still doing
then they're
all
not
the
a
things.
Woman. Then they're not a woman.
They're very feminine.
But
doing
they're not
all
a
the
woman.
feminine things.
But
you
they're
don't
not
know
a
that.
woman.
But you don't
Yes,
know
I
that.
do.
No, you don't. I'm saying in this experiment, if you know what you just described, what you saw, what they're wearing, what they're doing, how they're acting, you assume they're a woman.
Yes.
Would you treat them any differently from any other woman?
No.
Not knowing that they have a penis, would you treat them any differently than any other woman?
No.
Why?
Because I'm assuming they're a woman.
Okay. Now let's say that in conversation with them, they explain that they're actually trans. Is it going to change how you treat them?
Probably.
Why?
Because they're not a woman.
Okay. So let's go back to my old metaphor, the hair lip.
Okay, the hair lip. Yep.
Let's say that you, as a child, had a hair lip. You were very self-conscious about it. You talked to your parents about it. And it was causing you extreme duress. You were getting bullied at school because of it.
Yep.
Couldn't hide it. You couldn't get away from it. You got surgery and you got it fixed. Let's say I knew you as a kid. Now, every time I see you for the rest of your life, I'm not going to refer to you as Dave. I mean, hey, hair lip.
Yep.
Remember your hair lip? How's the hair lip doing? Even though you've changed it, it's no longer there. The hair lip has nothing to do with you, but you were born with it.
Yeah.
And so everyone knows and gets to know that you had it and is going to change how they treat you because you had a hair lip. How would that make you feel?
I wouldn't like it.
No, you wouldn't. I want to end this conversation because we said we were going to put a time limit on it. And we're about 3 minutes away from that because I arbitrarily decided an hour because we never really decided. I remember when I was a teenager and early 20s, you brought this argument up this discussion point up a couple of times, largely in regards to when I was drifting away from the church. Now, you may not have known it or called it that by name to me, but you brought up Pascal's wager to me. The idea that if I were to believe in God and follow his commandments and then die and turns out there is no God, sure, I would have missed out on some things. It is what it is. But if I live my life as if there is no God and then die and it turns out there is a God, I risk potential eternal punishment for it. That's Pascal's wager in a nutshell.
Right.
Let's take puberty blockers and set them aside for a second. Let's just talk about how we treat children that want to be treated as a different gender, not sex, but gender.
Right.
When I look at this situation, I look at the duress that children may be put under by me ignoring what they want to be treated as versus me accepting what they want to be treated as. This is me personally. I'm not expecting this of you. But when I look at this situation, I look at what are the potential costs or pitfalls of me accepting and just rolling with what they want to be and say they are versus the potential pitfalls of me actively opposing what they want to express themselves as.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what got me going down this rabbit hole of trans rights as a general rule, but specifically in this issue as well. And something that my brain keeps coming back to is that I think that the act of supporting them, even in things that may have some risk, even though I think the risks are very minimal, versus the potential cost of actively opposing them and what we know about suicide rates amongst trans people and what we know about depression rates amongst trans people, it makes the decision pretty clear for me which one I should be doing for me. And I want to throw that idea out to anyone who's watching or listening, and to you. I understand how important it is to you, their biological certainty of male or female. But what benefit is there to reminding them that, or to holding that over them, versus what harm is there in allowing them to express themselves as they see fit? In the same sense that harassing you about your theoretical hair lip, regardless of how much you've changed it, regardless of the fancy mustache you have to cover up the scar from where you had the hair lip removed, regardless of all these things, I still call you a hair lip. And I still hold that over you. Is not good for you. It's not kind to you. It's not compassionate to you. It's outright mean. And for me, it's really hard to listen to you say the things you say. The puberty blockers are one thing. I can understand trepidation and I can understand concerns about the long-term effects of that. But to hear you hold a person's biological sex over their head like it's some like you've got a gotcha, like you've nailed them in a lie, or that you as if they're giving you some fundamental untruth by acting a different gender from their biological sex. And I have a hard time grappling with that. I have a hard time understanding that. Because I don't like, it's hard for me, like this is now getting into our relationship. It's hard for me to view something that, I don't want to call it malicious. It's not malicious. I know it's not malicious from you. It feels, it leaves me feeling uncomfortable. And that's obviously largely due to a dissonance between how I feel about it and how you feel about it. And that dissonance leaves me feeling uncomfortable, like how my vision of my dad as an incredibly compassionate human being. And I'm trying to wrestle with this fact that you're engaging in language that I view as very non-compassionate. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying that to like throw shade or to guilt you into agreeing with me. I'm trying to be very vulnerable about how me internally have to grapple and be careful, because it would be really easy, like we saw 2 weeks ago. It's really easy for me to get angry about that. My internal view of how my dad is changing, and not changing for the worse. It's just change. It is what it is, but it's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable to have my internal monologue of what my dad is adjust on the fly. If that makes sense. It's very stream of consciousness right there.
I'm going to bring up the statement which made a man famous. His facts do not really care about our feelings. And I probably should leave the show at this ending, at your final statement. I think it's a good one. It's one I don't agree with, except that's okay. So I think we should move on. I want to reiterate, though, for those of you watching, that the whole point of this show is that you don't have to agree with me, William.
Don't worry, I don't.
The whole point of this show is I do not have to agree with you. And don't worry,
sure you don't.
I don't. And that is okay. The whole basis of this, and why I'm going to leave you with your opinion as the closing on the show, is that it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to have different opinions, even on fundamental things like this.
Yeah, I want to be clear. Just because I'm experiencing uncomfortable feelings about my understanding of my father doesn't mean I love him any less. That hasn't changed in the slightest. That does not fluctuate with how uncomfortable I feel.
Damn,
my discomfort at an
glad.
opinion of yours isn't affected. It doesn't affect how much I care for you.
I'm glad to hear that. Because even though I disagree with you wholeheartedly, you are my son and I love you. And at the end of the day, I'm coming up and I'm going to visit you at Christmas Day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to thoroughly enjoy the week I get to spend with you.
And your grandkids.
And we will disagree in person about this topic, probably. We'll probably disagree right after the show. But
yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to make very clear for those of you who actually watch through to the end of this,
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that it's okay for you to disagree with me.
Mm.
It just is. I mean, I don't have to
Yeah.
convince you of my point of view.
I mean, we'll keep trying, I'm
for
sure,
it to be my point of view. It doesn't change that. And again, I want all of you who watch us, and I know I have some people on the right-hand side of the aisle who will disagree with William. I had a friend of mine who said to me after the episode a couple weeks ago, I can't believe your son believes that stuff. I couldn't even talk to him. And I said, well, that's your problem right there. You couldn't talk to him. And that's the problem.
That's exactly it.
We have to have these conversations in society, and we have to have them healthily.
Mm-hmm.
Or we'll never get to the bottom of any of them. All we're going to do is be mad at each other all the time.
I agree. I think that is I think that is the fundamental difference between us and other kind of personality-driven or stream of consciousness shows that talk about large political topics, is that we can do that. Not to say that nobody can do that, but I don't think there's a lot of media out there online that's doing that.
No.
That we can come in and talk about our opinions and not have to be overly aggressive. Sometimes we do get aggressive. That's a fact of life. But as a general rule, we don't have to be.
That was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. We can talk about things that we disagree about very vehemently, and we can do it with love and compassion for each other and for anyone who disagrees with us.
So on that note, William,
that lovely note,
do you have anything to say to our viewers?
I do. Stay safe, don't die, and have yourselves a good night.